Hello, everyone. Monaco64 here, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. So it's Sunday, April 19th, 2020. There's Billy. He is here. He might jump off in a minute. He jumped off about 5 minutes ago. I had to tell him to go back up. So don't know if you saw. I put a link. I did some a new Billy design. It says, "Don't tread on Billy. Freedom and sound money for the world." I've seen a lot of the Gadsden flags out there in the protests in the states that are starting. We're starting to see people basically say we need to go back to work. So the title of the live stream is JP Morgan leads the way as the bankers pull the plug on credit. So I'm not surprised by the story. I'll come to the story in a minute. Basically, it's a lot easier for the bankers to help big corporations, big businesses with their bailouts. It's very hard for them to, they're not interested in small loans or mortgages or loans to, let's say, hairdressers or barber shops or small restaurants or diners. It's too complicated. And I think that's going to be a problem. But this story actually came out, let's see, a couple of days ago. The Motley Fool. I'll put a link to it here if some of you haven't seen it already. So basically, JP Morgan, which is the biggest bank in the US, so this is significant. They are raising the how can I say, the standards, mortgage lending standards, the FICO from 620 to 700. They're also raising the down payment that people need to put to get a mortgage from 5% of the property's value to 20%. So this article here is saying that this is a dramatic tightening. And you can bet if JP Morgan is doing this, other banks will be doing it as well. So we've got already quite a few people here. I did start a little early, 201 people and 50 thumbs up. Thank you, everyone. Alexis Douem from France. Hi, Alexis. John Lord from Manchester. Let's see who else is here. Will Nichols from Malta. Yeah, I've got a friend. Actually, he's from Northern Ireland, but he also has a place in Malta. Right now, he is in Northern Ireland. He just got his permit to live permanently in Malta, but unfortunately, right now, he's locked down. But yeah, he's moving for good to Malta. I went to Malta a few years ago when my cousins got married in Malta. Nice place. It's a bit of a mix, like English-Italian mix, I would say. It used to be an English colony or British colony. Market's going to crash. I don't know. I think I don't think a lot of people have been saying. I heard a comment from someone. You were saying this is a dead cat bounce, but it keeps bouncing. But I'm not convinced. The Fed has thrown over $2 trillion in less than 2 months into the market. It's thrown all these plans for helping private markets, and all you got was a 50% retracement. So all that's priced in now. So I think we're going to start seeing bad news now in terms of defaults, bankruptcies, and I'm going to come to that in a minute. I've got the usually don't buy newspapers, but I bought the Sunday Telegraph today, and I'm going to go through some stories here in the UK, and then I bet the same thing is happening in the US. Mark from Milwaukee, Sal from Bath. Hi, Sal. Colin from South Ireland, or the Republic, I guess. PT from Kansas City, Missouri. Tom Watson was from Kansas City, my favorite golfer. Hit the thumbs up, says Smiley Blue. Les Paul from Bristol. You're welcome, Morad. No, he's here. He's been here for a long time. R. Bush from Germany. I saw in Germany a lot of the medical profession is questioning a lot more what's going on. I saw that a medical lawyer in Germany, she kind of protested, and they put her in a psychiatric ward, basically locked her up. So interesting things going on. Graham Hobbs. Hi, Graham. Nice to see you. World Community. Faye Selja from Vancouver, Metro Vancouver, Canada. No to drugs, Butchie Harding. Yeah, I don't take any medication. A few years ago, I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, and they told me to take metformin. I did start taking it, and then I realized that what I needed to do was exercise more and eat less carbohydrates. So, and I stopped taking the metformin, and then my blood levels just dropped massively. And the nurse and the doctor, every time I go back, they're surprised that I don't have it anymore, and no drugs. Jimmy Tidwell, thank you for the super chat donation. Hi, Steve McCrae. Nice to see you here. From someone from Jordan. Good. Jordan in the Middle East. Stuking, what do you think of Dr. Nenner's 5,000? Yeah, I don't disagree with him. I think we could go there. There's other people who see it even lower, maybe 4,000. I made a video a few weeks ago. I projected 9,000, but 5,000 is possible. With gold at 5,000, that would be a 1-to-1 ratio, Dow gold ratio. Jimmy Tidwell, thank you. Yeah, thank you again. He says, appreciate your channel. Watch it every day. Do you think Murdoch wants Boris out? I've found it quite suspicious that Boris Johnson got ill, and he's recovered over a week ago, and he's still not doesn't seem to be involved in the decisions. Very possible. I don't know if it's Murdoch, but someone behind the scenes. It looks to me that up until we went on lockdown, Boris Johnson wanted to let, I think it's called, what is it called? Herd immunity. He wanted to just let people live, not be on lockdown and become immune to this thing. And I think he was put down in terms of his opinion. And they said, oh, you're ill right now. We need to, they did a test on him. They could have said anything. Oh, you've got this. I spoke today to a friend from the golf club. He's also the greenkeeper, one of the greenkeepers at the golf club, and they're still working. The golf course is closed, but they're still keeping the course manicured. And I said, I haven't heard anyone around where I live, neighbors, anyone who's got this thing or died from it. And he said, well, I've heard that one person has it. My friend said his wife got it. But the thing is, she went for an operation that had been, I think, planned for months in the NHS, and she went for the operation, did the operation, and they said at the end of the operation, oh, by the way, you've got this virus, because they did a test, but she didn't feel anything. She went there for just another operation. So now she's probably a statistic for this thing. Let's see, Dan, who has enjoying rare and seasonal UK sunshine, wondering this is all going 1-to-1. Dow gold is out. Did think was happening. I don't think it's out. I think it will eventually happen. Yeah, right now the stock market seems to be outperforming gold. But if you look in 2018, I think it was September, we were above 22, the Dow Gold ratio. Now we're in the low teens or even 12s. So I think it could move very quickly. Nathan Armour, good to see you. Would like to hear you talk about deflation to inflation environment. Looking at US dollar strength against what? I mean, I think the dollar is weak. The dollar has dropped from 1,515th of an ounce beginning of the year. It's now worth 1,685th of an ounce of gold. So the dollar is weak. Maybe against other fiat currencies, it will go up and down like it has. But I did a video interview with a Belgian economist, Brecht Arnert, and I did it less than a week ago. If you go into my, and he explained very well about deflation and inflation. See his name, yeah, go into my channel and Google, search for that name under videos, and he explains really well the whole deflation and inflation thing. Andrew Hunstiger says if you had the flu shot, you test positive for it. I've never taken the flu shot. I've been asked. I get asked every year. I get a letter from the local GP or NHS, and they say, "Oh, you're eligible for flu shot." I always ignore it. I've never. I hardly get sick, really. I think 4 years ago I got, or 3, at Christmas, I got something called a novo virus. That was bad, but that was it in the last 10 years. So there you go. Tricky Dicky, did you think of UK government extending its overdraft with the Treasury? Sounds very fishy to me. Free money for the government. Yeah, that's right. I made a video about that. That's right. They're saying they're going to pay it back by the end of the year, but I'll buy that. I'll buy the end of the year, meaning I think it's going to be a lot. They're never going to pay that back, and and we don't know how much they're going to be, getting from the Bank of England directly. So they're bypassing the gilt market. That means that they're not confident that they can keep interest rates low with all the money that they need to have. And I think that's a really bad sign. Narrow Mind says government now doesn't need your consent to vaccinate you. I don't know. I don't know which government you're talking about. I think they're going to have a hard time, even here in the UK, forcing people to get the vaccination, the Bill Gates vaccination. I read sometimes the Daily Mail, for example. Yesterday there was a story about Bill Gates, and you go in the comment section, and you click on the best comment, which is the one that has the most thumbs up, and all of them are highly critical of Bill. Crypto Bird Dog. Hi, Crypto Bird Dog. Nice to see you here. Sarah Zane, if silver price goes to 500, how do you transfer silver to, say, food or real estate? Well, you just well, there's two options. One is you sell it to the dealer, the silver dealer. They buy and sell silver, so you sell it for fiat. The second option, if the dollar by then, the Federal Reserve note is not accepted anymore, I'm sure they will accept silver. It's like where I grew up, where I was born in Brazil. There's a lot of inflation always, and a lot of people held dollars. And you couldn't go to a shop or anywhere and use dollars, but you could always exchange it. Uh, and it was always, a lot of it was done in the black market. And what does that mean? Well, you didn't go to a bank. You'd be stupid to go to a bank, let's say in Brazil, to try to change dollars for the local currency, because they didn't give you a very good rate. But a lot of the travel agents, they did foreign exchange because they had people coming from abroad and they did business abroad. So you'd get a better rate. And then you exchange your dollar for the local Brazilian currency and you spend it. And it's the same thing with silver. I'm sure you will find people who will, who will want your silver for the local trash fiat currency, especially if silver is at 1,000 or 500. Graham says, would you explain more about Crimex LBMA lack of reserves? Yeah, it is a little bit complicated. COMEX say that they have eligible reserves and registered reserves. Eligible just means that it's gold that they could eventually get if someone wanted delivery. And they actually updated it this week, and they said that they only have 50% of what they thought they had and eligible. So that means the pool of physical gold that they could potentially get is half. So that means there's not as much gold. The registered gold as well is the gold that is supposedly in the COMEX approved vaults. But Ronan Manley in that article, he even says that even that is not really real. It's just warrants or paper. So there isn't that much gold. And I think people are twigging onto it. Prudenda Johnson says, I had a Brazilian once. Okay. Yeah, I know what you mean. Bullion Vault, I think they're okay. I'm not sure if they deliver. One thing I would say, though, they have links to the Rothschilds. I think Graham Hobbs told me about that, Bullion Vault. Do you think the market is currently in the bear flag? Yeah, it does look like it, the stock market. You know, people reacted the same way after 1929. They thought, you know, the market crashed from the top in September, made a bottom in November. Then it rallied all the way until April or May 1930, and people thought it was over, but it was only starting. The same thing in the early 90s. People thought, you know, the Nikkei dropped, made the initial drop from almost 40,000, and then it rebounded, and people thought, oh, this is over now. And here we are, 30 years later, and the Nikkei is nowhere near 40,000. So yeah, Bell and GP did a video today. I've been in contact with Bell and GP, by the way. We're doing an interview next Saturday. So yeah, we're gonna have a chat or conversation, Bell and GP and me. Do you think because of rising premiums, it will force the COMEX price higher? Probably. Yeah, so-called silver. Yeah, I have seen Bell and GP's video. I always check his channel because I like his videos. The majority of the gold, I think, you know, the sovereign countries or central banks, they own about 35,000 tons. So that's about 20% of all the gold. The rest of the gold is all in private hands. So there you go. The people own the gold mostly. So the JP Morgan story then, is also related to a video I did about 9 days or a week ago. In the FT, it says U.S. is on course for a downward spiral of mortgage failures. Government policy would exacerbate an already tricky situation. I've spoken about this, basically saying how regulators are cracking down on lending standards as well. And this is happening everywhere. I think about a month ago when the Fed and all the central banks and governments came out with all these plans, people thought, oh, everything's fine. But I think it's going to, in practice, is going to be a lot harder. There's going to be a lot of trouble out there. And I think the longer they delay these, extend these lockdowns, the more uncertainty that there is. Yes, Graham, that's true. I mean, there's about 180,000 tons of gold out there. Official gold for countries is 35,000 tons, which is about 20%, I would say. So, yeah, I think a lot of the gold is held, a lot of it is in India. The Indians own a lot of gold, Indian people. So, oh yeah, there's a story here. Travel chiefs line up for £4 billion refund aid package. So the travel agents and they're trying to get a bailout in airlines. People have canceled. They try to get a refund for trips or holidays that they booked that they can't go to anymore. And these travel companies want to give them a credit note, but people want their cash. So you see, everyone wants a bailout, and that's why. And I think a lot of them are going to get it, but not the small people, of course. And I think if you think about it, if you're a saver, and let's say you're really wealthy, you've got a lot of money in the bank, and you see that the government and the banks are bailing out everyone and just printing all this money, you kind of wonder, this is not right. This is going to make this even, this can't be worth anything anymore if they're creating it so easily. And I think people are going to twig onto that. And when that happens, you're going to see confidence in the currency be lost. Bellinger P was saying the reason why he thinks gold hasn't gone up yet is because the Treasury in the US, for example, is holding almost $500 billion in their account with the New York Fed. But they're going to take that money and start spending it. And when they do that, the money supply is going to increase even more because the money supply hasn't increased as much as the Fed's balance sheet, even though year on year, he says it's increased about 50%, which is quite a lot. Carlos from California coast. Yeah, I saw that, Jeff Brown. She's worth a few hundred million, her family, and she is asking for a bailout. There is no shame, I would say. The reason they do it, though, is that they can. The system allows them to do it. Yeah. Libertarian Forever from Virginia. You've got the, excuse me, Don't Tread on Me logo there. I see. Billy's got a new line of T-shirts and mugs. It's the Don't Tread on Billy. I'll put a link here in the Teespring store. It says, Don't Tread on Billy, freedom and sound money for the world. No Bullion Vault's founder issued a warning to clients not to keep large amounts of cash in their Bullion Vault accounts due to Lloyd's of London and Wells Fargo being actual banks holding client cash. Well, there you go. I don't know about the gold. So we've got quite a few people for me. 650. Uh, I don't know. I forgot who asked me about this. Maybe he's or she is doing the live, watching the live stream. They asked me if I looked at "Behold a Pale Horse" by William Cooper. So I do have the book. William Cooper was a great great guy. I think he kind of knew right away what happened after 9/11. I think he was actually warning before 9/11 happened. And whoever asked me about this asked me if I could touch upon chapter 16, the story of Jonathan May. Jonathan May was a really interesting character. He was born in Devon, I think, here in the UK. He was from a farming family, and it's a really interesting story. I'll touch upon that in a minute. William Birkin wrote, I heard from Big Swear that BlackRock has taken over the Great Silver Short. Yeah, I heard BlackRock is now working for the Fed and the Treasury as well. No conflict of interest, though, right? Pretenda has some Britannias. Is that silver or gold Britannias, Pretenda? Or Padenda? I'm not. Okay, what else? There's another story here in the Sunday Telegraph. It says, City bailout team racing against time to save firms, right? And an interesting, I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but towards the end of the article, it says, one city executive approached by the task force said he fears the group will come up with a proposition that puts too much taxpayer money on the line. And he says, that's a quote here, someone here is going to lose. The question is who and when. It's easier, and this is the important part, I think. It says it's easier to take a risk with a FTSE 100 company than it is with a calf, spa, or hairdresser. Sir Philip Hampton, the former chairman of bailed out RBS, said the government taking stakes in companies should be a last resort. And I think this is not only going to happen here in the UK, the fact that they're not going to really bail out the small businesses. And I think it's one of the reasons you're starting to see people in the US, small business owners, starting to demonstrate and protest in places like Michigan, Kentucky, Texas, and Ohio. So it looks like Billy's going to jump off. He's had enough. I think house prices are going to drop everywhere around the world. The title of the live stream. Where is it again? I wrote it down on the paper because you put the title up, but you don't see it when you're doing the live stream. Yeah. So as for house prices, you see J.P. Morgan leads the way as the bankers pull the plug on credit. So J.P. Morgan, the biggest bank probably in the world, and not the world, but in the U.S., they've said that they're raising credit standards. So the FICO score from 620 to 700 now, if you want to take on a mortgage, and you're going to have to put 400% more down minimum. So they've raised the minimum that you can put down. You need to put down to buy a house or a property from 5% to 20%. That's going to hammer house prices in the US. And I think the same thing is going to happen here and everywhere around the world. The other thing I think is going to happen, it's going to be very hard to buy or sell your house. So that's what I think is going to happen. Yeah, Billy is going to check on his silver. G1 West, except on Bishop's Avenue and 6. Yeah, very expensive properties there. Bishop's Avenue in North London. Real estate could lose 50%. I agree. Oh, so I'll just go through a little bit the story of Jonathan May. I think Lindsay Williams talked to Jonathan May in the early 90s. So I'm not going to go through the whole chapter, of course. I just go through the introduction here in the book. The story of Jonathan May. This is really interesting. Jonathan May attempted to free us from the shackles of the Federal Reserve by creating an alternate banking system with instruments backed by land and raw materials, mineral deposits, oil, coal, timber, and other wilderness holdings. Jonathan aided Governor Connolly, that's Texas, and the Hunt brothers in their effort to corner the silver market. The silver would have been used to create the Bank of Texas issue of real money. This would have destroyed the Federal Reserve had the Hunts been successful. When the world bankers realized what was happening, they destroyed Connolly, the Hunt brothers, and Jonathan May and Texas. The Federal Reserve entrapped Mr. May by intentionally routing his credit instruments through the Federal Reserve against the terms clearly stated upon those instruments, instead of through Mr. May's alternate system. Jonathan May was illegally arrested, illegally tried, and illegally imprisoned in the federal prison at Terre Haute, Indiana. The world power structure has stolen Mr. May's idea, which will be used as the banking system of the New World Order and is known as the World Conservation Bank. Jonathan has served 4 years of a 15-year sentence. So, yeah, very interesting stuff. I recommend if you Google Jonathan May and Lindsay Williams, you can probably listen to the interview he did. I think Lindsay Williams went to the prison that he was in, Jonathan May, and they recorded the conversation, or he phoned them from somewhere. So that's the story of Jonathan May. Future of Bitcoin, I don't know. I mean, Bitcoin has been stuck in a bear market for over 2 years. Some people think it's going to go a lot higher. Who knows? I have a little bit of Bitcoin and some other cryptocurrencies, but I'm not too convinced. I think Wall Street and the powers that be may be hijacking the cryptocurrency space. That's why I prefer precious metals. Paul Flyman, thank you for the super chat. Yeah, I publish my videos and sometimes I write on Steemit. I've done it for almost 4 years, steemit.com. I've been there for a long time. And today I wanted to sell some of my Steem. And I noticed that they provide the Steem wallet provides you with a place to go and sell it. And the place they provide now is Poloniex, which is an exchange I used to use, but I stopped using them until a company that's owned by Goldman Sachs bought Poloniex. And I'm not happy with Steemit using that company, Poloniex. Yeah, so yeah, I'm not too impressed. The problem about Bitcoin, yeah, it is decentralized, but if you if you have to liquidate it for the local currency, because like gold and silver, you can't go and sell directly or buy stuff directly with gold and silver. you have to liquidate it for the local fiat. And all the places where you do that now, they track you. So yeah, that's gold and silver as well, but it's not as how can I say, digitalized as cryptocurrencies. Yeah, Bill Cooper. Yeah, he's a good. Yeah, recommend that. Jonathan May. I'll write his name down here. If you Google that, you could probably find. You probably find the interview. Thank you, Graham. 888. That's infinity, isn't it? All the eights. The Chinese like the eights. Don't forget to support Marion Billy. Impartial advice is a rare thing in these times. Links in the box below the header. Yeah, talking about Chinese and 888, I think that's another thing we need to guard against is, scapegoating what's happening now, this crisis, all on the Chinese. I know they're not saints, but nor are our government saints. Our governments have been telling us porkies for hundreds of years. So, and I think what's going on is that they're trying to foment, uh, how can I say, anger, and it could lead to kinetic war. And that's why I'm saying this. That's what they want because they're losing. I think I'm not sure they're going to be successful. I think there's a lot of people who are not buying into what's going to happening, especially with Bill Gates as well. So they're trying to play the China card. I think that's dangerous. I know I interviewed Jim Rickards a few weeks ago, and my wife was telling me that he was on being interviewed by someone, and he was having a go at the Chinese. And she told me what he said, and I said to her, I don't agree with him. And yeah, I might not get another interview with him, but I have to say it as it is. I think the other guy that's really playing the anti-China game is a hedge fund manager called Kyle Bass. He's such a. I mean, this guy was a few years ago. He was shorting Chinese credit. He thought, oh, China's going to collapse, and it hasn't. So now he's resorted to trying to foment conflict with China, being very critical. And I'm not saying I'm not a communist. I'm not an authoritarian, and I know the Chinese are not saints, as I said. But I think if we look back, especially, well, we can go back to World War II. Some of you have heard of the Bank for International Settlements. The Tower of Basel is a book I've talked about before. I don't have it with me right now, but it basically shows how all the warring factions, even the people who were fighting against each other, they had bankers representing them in the Bank for International Settlements. They were doing business together. This is what I'm trying to say. Yeah, China is bad news, but you can bet a lot of the people, the establishment, not only in the UK and the US and other countries, they're dealing with the Chinese. So, yeah, this is just trying to divide and conquer us. I think that's why we need to be careful. And it's the same thing that happened the oil crisis, the OPEC embargo in the 1970s. If you read Lindsay Williams, The Energy Non-Crisis, most people think it was a crisis created by the Arabs. They were greedy Arabs. They wanted more money for their oil. But if you read Lindsay's book, he tells you that the U.S. government was also telling oil companies to shut their pipeline within the U.S. to limit the supply of oil. So what I'm trying to say is that these people don't care about countries and nations. It's an international thing. They're just playing us. They're up here, we're down here, and like they're like puppet masters. IBE was trying to explain to a friend why we need to end the Fed. Could you speak a little bit about that? And why can't they just keep printing money like always? Yes, more debt, but so what? Well, the problem is that at one point, at a certain point, the debt gets to, you know, becomes a burden on the economy. The US has gotten away with it because of the petrodollar, because there's a lot of demand for dollars from abroad, but that's becoming more and more difficult now. So the less demand there is for dollars, the less value it becomes. America could keep printing and borrowing because foreigners needed it, but now it's changing. And the other thing you can tell your friend, the US didn't have a central bank from 1836 to 1913. And I think the US did quite well during that period. Stanchik says Monero could be a good punt. Yeah, some people say it's a privacy coin. But again, when you have to spend that, you need to go through the system. And the other thing about cryptocurrencies, it's all recorded. You cannot delete any transaction. So it's very public. And if governments get a hold of that system, I'm not too sure. I want to be too involved in that. But it doesn't mean to say that you can't have a few of these things if they really go up in value massively. Um, yeah, you can do well from it. XRP Freak thinks privacy coins will all be illegal. You go to me too. Yeah, I agree what you're saying there about the Fed, but I think that's the way they sold the Fed, but they knew that the war was coming. And why do I say that? Well, you need to listen to Norman Dodd's interview with Pete Edward Griffin. Yeah, these things are all planned. So yeah, that's the way they sold the Fed, but they knew all along that the Fed would become what the Fed is now. That's my opinion. Liberty Report. Yeah, Tom Jones. I watched the latest Liberty Report. Ron Paul and McAdams was a good one. George Gammon and his Fed coin upload. That's what it will be for the future. I don't really know what the future is going to be like. I just know that for 5,000 years, gold and silver have been money, and I think it's going to be the same for the next 1,000. So whatever currency or coin they bring in, I think precious metals will be a big part of that system. It might not be a gold or silver coin, but it could back the system. So there will be demand for that. I don't remember that. I think I've heard about that, about the tetanus vaccine. I don't know much about it as well either. Don't, yeah, I've heard stuff about polio vaccine as well. Adam G, Bullion Vault. I had an account with them years ago. Had a little bit there. I think I still have it, but I don't have much in there. I don't know if you can take delivery from Bullion Vault. The other thing I said is that I think they have their origins is Rothschilds family. They're involved in that. Gold money as well. For example, the Soros family, it has a big share of gold money. I, of course, I prefer physical, but I also have the Glint card. The Glint card, you can spend the gold, like with gold money, and they store your gold in Switzerland in a private vault allocated. Glint. If you want to check the details, it's in the description of all my videos. I have a promo code with them, but you don't have to get a Glint card. Try Bullion Vault. Try Gold Money. Try, see which one you prefer. It's always good to have some options. Same shirt, different day, talking about vaccines. I think one of the big problems with vaccines is that they, the pharmaceutical companies, they want to make a lot of money from them. So I think they put them, a lot of them, all together, and they put outside agents that are not good for people to keep them to be able to keep them together and preserve them. I think that's the problem. The idea of vaccines themselves are not a bad idea. It's just what they put in the vaccines, like metals and mercury and things like that. Doesn't state the Rothschild as the owners. They might not be the owners, but I think they financed it in the beginning. Graham Hobbs, he's here on the live stream, or he might be gone, but he stopped from putting money there because he found out about that, and he told me, and I knew that from before. Abe Froman, how about a cryptocurrency pegged to the population GDP? The problem with those things is that people can always manipulate the formulas. It's very prone to corruption. Gold and silver is not prone to corruption. You have to dig it out of the ground. Historically, the growth of the amount that's taken out of the ground, new reserves every year, is about 2%, which happens to be very close to the growth rate of the population of the world. And that's why gold has been money. But if you try to do that artificially with a computer, with formulas, the people in charge of that system can always manipulate that system. And that's why I don't like that. Yeah, I think silver, like Tony Yanone says, silver is very undervalued. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I was gonna tell you guys. Tomorrow I'm going to because I called yesterday my coin dealer in Bromley, um, here in London, and he's still open. I'm gonna go there tomorrow morning to get. He has some silver half dollars, 1964 half dollars. So I'm gonna go to Bromley tomorrow to get some. My wife's coming with me, and then we're going shopping for food. So that's interesting. Buy some silver. Thank you, Phoenix FP40. Do you see a run on UK banks anytime soon? I think unlikely. And why do I say that? Well, because the Bank of England and the government are going to throw everything at the system to keep people from taking their money out. But you can never say never. But yeah, I wouldn't trust that FCSCS, FCSS. It's always complicated saying that. It's like the FDIC equivalent of the UK, the $85,000 pound, sorry, uh, insurance. I wouldn't trust that. So I would, my strategy is to always keep as little money with the bank. Well, it's not really money. It's an unsecured loan to the banks. Keep as little as possible there. I'm not sure. I think he told me it's around 5 to 6 pounds for a $0.50. That's what he told me. Kevin Cross, thank you for the super chat. €229. DNC, what do you think do you think we will witness the breakup of the EU? I'm not sure if it's going to be this summer, but yeah, the EU is not really coordinating this crisis very well. Italy, they haven't been helped, so it's very possible. But I'm not sure if it's going to be this summer. It could. If things get worse, people get angrier about being locked in their homes. The $0.50. Hi, Tom. I think he told me he's got like 20 or 30. And I'm going to have a look at some numismatic coins, collector's coins. I don't buy those too much, but once in a while I like them. He says he's got Charles II shilling, and I think that's quite interesting. Kevin Cross, thanks again. Hopefully, yeah, Kevin Cross, make sure you haven't pressed the button too many times, because thank you very much, 3 times, but just make sure that there isn't something wrong with your system. Yeah, I do listen to Australian DFA. I do like, is it John Adams and is it David North? I forgot his first name. They're good. I recommend them. How to replace the Fed? Well, you don't have to replace the Fed. All you need to do is to abolish the Fed. The U.S. Constitution already, how can I say, tells you, what the monetary system should be. That only gold and silver should be yeah, only gold and silver coins should be a legal tender, and I think is the Coinage Act of 1792 or 1790 tells you exactly the standard that the coins should be. So you don't have to replace it with anything. You just have to abolish it and let the free market take hold. Yeah, of course, the government sets the standard, but you could even use foreign coins according to the U.S. Constitution. Lord Humongous says Ron Paul said the Fed is going to destroy itself. Let's hope so, because basically the Fed is the most leveraged hedge fund in the world right now. They have very little equity, but they have a huge balance sheet, and it's increasing. Abba Century says uneducated economist has one of your mugs. Is that a YouTube channel? I haven't heard of uneducated economist. I'll have a look. Yeah, the Fed is a hybrid. All the regional banks are private corporations, the 12 regional banks. And if you look at the Fed's balance sheet, It's all divided up in, and each regional bank has a certain amount. The New York Fed is the biggest, but the government part is the board, the Federal Reserve Board, which is in Washington D.C. But they don't have any assets. It's all the private regional banks. So it's like a hybrid. But I would say the regional banks are much more powerful, especially the New York Fed, which is, of course, probably owned by the major New York banks. Not probably, most definitely. The purpose of the Fed buying junk bonds is to save that junk bond market. Yeah, because there's no buyers in the real market. That's why they're buying it, to keep the price high. So to keep the banks' balance sheets and to save their friends, the private equity guys, the hedge funds. That's why they're buying it. It's not to help Main Street. Fannie and Freddie Mac, good investment. No, I don't think any paper investment right now is good. It's supposed to be government guaranteed, but it doesn't mean much. Billy Airways 2020. Thank you, Abbott Century. I'll have a look at Uneducated Economists. I'm going to actually. I've got his page up so I don't forget it. I have a look at him. I'll subscribe. The Fed not on the list. It should be on the list. The Fed, the guy who's in charge of the FSB, the regulatory part of the BIS. He's from the board of the Federal Reserve. Randall Quarles, his name. No, the Fed is definitely part of the BIS. It wasn't. I think during World War II, the American representative at the BIS in World War II was a J.P. Morgan banker. Gold silver ratio, what it should be. I mean, I would say right now with where gold is, we should be more like around 70, going towards 60. But historically, going back centuries, there's a lot of people talk about the 15-1 or 16-1. And I think in the last 50 years, 30 has been a important level, and the mean level has been around the low 50s. I'll take a few more questions. We're reaching the 1 hour mark. Alphabet, a good investment. I don't really give investment advice. Alphabet, I guess, is the Google and YouTube, right? I think, yeah, a lot. I think we need to wait. I think another 18 months, maybe 2 years, to start thinking about investing in the stock market. I think it's going to go a lot lower. That's my opinion. He does his videos from his Camry, from his car, I guess. Best prediction for the next 2 weeks, global economy. I think it will be a lot worse than people think. And by that, I mean, the major economists, Wall Street, the data is going to come a lot worse. And I think from May onwards, is going to be really bad. I think April is still going to hold up a bit. Flown T07, shouldn't we be shorting stocks? The problem with shorting stocks right now is that in March, I did a little bit of trading, spread betting here in the UK. And a lot of times I couldn't even get out of the positions because it was limit down. And then when the market reopened, the market jumped up. So I think you need to stay out of the market. Even Charles Nenner said that unless you're really an expert, you can lose a lot of money even though you put on the right trade. So yeah, I wouldn't. The best way to short the stock market is to have cash or gold. Then when the stock market drops, you can buy a lot more with that cash or gold. Typo, thank you for the super chat. Says, if elites have gold, what if people dump gold? Well, Lindsay Williams always said that gold is the currency or the money of the elite. I don't know what you mean by if people dump gold. Do you mean the elites dumping their gold? I don't think they would dump their gold, and I think the general public doesn't have much gold. Why would you dump gold for paper currencies that are being created out of thin air like there's no tomorrow? Unless you really need to spend, you have an emergency, you lose your income, I would hold on to it. Okay, thank you everyone for showing up, for your questions, and for just being here for the live stream. I appreciate it. And I'll talk to you next week. I wish you all a great rest of the weekend. As for what's happening, I think we need to just be patient. Sometimes I get down on myself because of what's happening. We don't know what's going to come next. But I think we just need to keep calm and just stay healthy. I've been walking quite a bit to the park and back. There's a big park near where I live. So I try to go every day. I think it's good to stay in shape and try to eat healthily as possible as well. Okay. Goodbye, everyone. Thanks again.